All right. Can y'all see the screen online?
God.
All right. So just getting started, the class shouldn't take too long. Some is a review and then, getting into some of the new stuff. I haven't talked about any like news items or anything like that for a while. So I saw this come across and it's been happening for months and months, but, I haven't said anything. But this is not a scare tactic or fear mongering or anything of that nature. It's just that so we can be aware, so that we can watch and pray, just seeing what we got going on around us. And you guys know what we went through from the end of 2019, early 2020, with the pandemic and things of that nature. And it's always up in the air for them to, pretty much run that same play again. And from the spiritual word Instagram page posted how the CDC announced a severe case of bird flu showing mutations. They're trying to say that it's possible that it can go from the animals. First, it's going from the birds to like the cows, etc. And they're trying to say that it's possible that it can eventually go from human to human. The next picture shows that the BRICS News says that the bird flu virus is showing mutations in its first severe human case in the United States. And this guy Dabu7, he has a YouTube channel, and he just said what like we would all say, or me and Miss Joy definitely would say. And he said, any moment now, and just saying how we can see the patterns of what they've been doing or what they've done before. And also, too, the state of California had called a state of emergency as well for the bird flu H1N5 or something like that. And I'm gonna just play a quick video, and then they'll kind of give you like a update on kind of what's going on, and then we'll get into the class.
Alert in California. Avian flu H5N1 threatens humans and spreads rapidly. California has declared a state of emergency in response to a fast-spreading outbreak of avian flu H5N1, heightening fears of a potential jump to humans that could spark a global health crisis. The virus, which has devastated livestock, was first detected in the state in late August and has since infected 645 dairy herds. Nearly half of these cases occurred in the last 30 days, highlighting the alarming speed of transmission. The outbreak isn't limited to animals. Dozens of dairy workers have contracted the virus, with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like conditions to severe respiratory distress. Health officials are closely monitoring these cases for signs of human-to-human transmission, which could escalate the crisis exponentially. Nationally, 61 human cases of H5N1 have been reported, and 34 of them occurred in California. Experts describe the situation as a pandemic, unfolding in slow motion, warning that the state is at a critical tipping point. Authorities are intensifying measures to contain the virus, including the culling of infected herds, heightened biosecurity protocols, and public health advisories. However, concerns remain about the virus's ability to mutate further. Residents are urged to report any unusual symptoms in livestock or themselves and to follow all guidance issued by health officials.
All right, so as you can see, the propaganda and things like that is definitely in the air. And I just wanted to let everyone be aware so we can just watch and pray. And, we know it's not beyond them to, you know, pull what they call a false flag or some type of psychological war game to get a result of us going into lockdowns or whatever the case may be. Again, just watch and pray, family. Stay alert, stay prepared in your minds, hearts, and in your homes. Miss Joy, did you have any comments?
The only thing I was going to say is it's just so interesting to me how they're really not talking about the elephant in the room, So this could be just like one of those things where they're blaming it on the birds and the cows and all this the livestock, but it could be a result, and it more than likely is a result of the solution that many people took to cure the so-called disease that they put out. So I just, like you said, it's propaganda. We shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't run into, it's like I was using the analogy of like running from a spider into four-way traffic. Like it's just don't be afraid. Just, pray, watch, pray, and use common sense if you have it. So that's it.
Absolutely. I knew she would have a comment because we talk about this stuff all the time. So I love Miss Joy, and she is absolutely right. Like I said, this is not a fear thing.
Alert in California.
Just for us to be aware and to watch and pray. So we're gonna jump into the class, and it's just a continuation of what we've been talking about. Those who have been following us or paying attention. And the first two classes, Darkness to Light, A Light to the Gentiles, they're on the Torah Group YouTube channel. And this is kind of like a continuation of that. My first USB drive crashed, so I had to kind of start over. So normally I would scroll through all the stuff we went through before, but most of that stuff is in the ethers now. But we talked about the light, we talked about darkness, we talked about what it meant, we talked about the different aspects to it, and we're going to review a little bit of it. But the last part was for us to be the children of the light. So we're finally getting to that part. And like I said, it shouldn't take us too long. But children of the light, and let's see what we can get into. So as far as the review, let me cut the camera. As far as the review, the word awar is the most common word used for light. And we started with Genesis 1, and we talked about how in Genesis 1, the light was the first thing formed from the Most High. And we connected that to the Messiah using Colossians 1. And we broke the word down, awar or awara, as the first connection to the chief or the first connection to the Most High, the first thing joined to the Most High as that light. And we know that his son is that light. Also, we talked about the light representing his commandments and his covenant and his Torah. And the verses are on the screen for that we covered as well. Proverbs 6:23. And if you don't mind just reading that just for a review. But again, the part with this is on YouTube already for you to review. But just to give a witness, since we're here, we'll have Brother Anthony read two of these, and just so we can all get on the same page. So Proverbs 6:23.
Proverbs 6:23 reads, "For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is a light. Reproofs of instruction are the way of life."
So you see that the commandment is a lamp, and the commandment and the law is light. Either one, Psalms 19 or Psalms 119, just for a second witness.
All right. This is Psalm 119 and verse 130. "The entrance of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple."
Absolutely, absolutely. All praises. So again, for someone who may have never seen this before, I definitely recommend going on the YouTube so you can get the long form conversation about this, just to catch you up. But we have the three Hebrew characters there, the Ah, Wah, and the Ra. And the Ah representing the ox head. It can mean first. the tent peg in the middle is kind of like something you would, nail a tent down. So it can be something representing security or joining to or connecting to something. And then the head of a man can represent a man, the chief. And we know that the chief is the Most High. It can also represent the beginning of something as well. But when you read Genesis 1 and seeing how it's the first thing from the Most High, even before he created the sun and the moon, that's why it's the first connection to the chief, or the first connection to the Most High, Awar, the light. Then this I screen grabbed from the YouTube channel that we did from before, and we talked about how Yahushua, his son, talked about how he was the light of the world, and we referenced John chapter 8, and in John chapter 8 he mentions how he was the light of the world. And this part, like I said, is just review. John 1, we talked about how in the beginning was his word, just like that light that was in the beginning, and how he was the light of men. How he was the light of men. Then we went to John 9, and it was just talking about how the light has come into the world from the Messiah, and he had a mission where, he was unblinding the eyes, of his people. And lastly, we covered just more precepts about him coming into the world. The precepts are on the screen, but again, this was covered in part 2 on YouTube. So I didn't want to rehash too much and go too deep into those. But I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So we covered darkness, we covered light, and we're covering the fact that Yahushua is the light, but he left behind, his message was that we are to walk as he walked, and now we are to be the lights. So that's what we're going to get into today. And if you don't mind, the first one we want to get into is 1 John 1, and we're going to go to verses 5 through 7. Shema, we have it.
All right, 1 John chapter 1, starting at verse 5. This is the message which we have heard from him and declared to you, that the Most High is light, and in him is no darkness at all.
So the Most High himself is light, and in him there is no darkness. That's why we get the word or the commandments from the light, the original source. And continue.
Verse 6, if we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth.
So if I know we have a few people in the class and a few people online, but what is the truth? The commandments, the law, right? So if you're walking in darkness, what would you say that means? You're sinning. You're not following the law. So it says, if we say we have fellowship with the Most High and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. So what that's saying is, if you're saying that you're following God, the Most High, Yahweh, his son, Yahushua, and you're sinning, which is transgressing his law, then you're a liar. Because what you're going to see here, and this is the New Testament, what I saw, the light and the darkness and all the metaphors that we've been using and the symbolism, if you boil it down to the simplest, statement, they're just telling us that we're supposed to keep the commandments. It's just a fancier way of saying that we're supposed to keep the commandments. And this is, I feel like, something that's good for a newer person or like your friends and family, but he's just using this message from the beginning about light and darkness and all of these things. And then you'll start seeing the same phrases used by the people in the New Testament. Verse 7.
Verse 7, but if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach, his son, cleanses us from all sin.
So now if we establish that if we're walking in darkness, that means we're sinning. We're walking contrary to the Most High's ways, his word. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, then we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of his son cleanses us from all sins. But do y'all see that? It says if and then. So it's saying if we walk in the light, keep his commandments, because Proverbs 6:23, Psalms 119, it talks about how the law is his light. So if we're walking in his commandments, then his son's blood will cleanse us from our sins. But if we're not walking in his light, his son's blood is not going to cleanse us from our sins. And I think that's so important because, you know, we have a lot of our brothers and sisters who still believe that you don't have to keep the Most High's commandments. So I'm seeing this today just from a whole different perspective. Like, it's the same message, it's just told in a different way. So does that make sense for anybody? Anybody have comments in the classroom? Anybody online want to unmute? All right. So we're going to go back to Colossians 1. Colossians chapter 1, where, here is where we talked about how, the Messiah was the firstborn of all creation. But his mission and his goal was to pull us out of the darkness so that we can return and walk in the light. So, Shema, will you have it? Go ahead, Op.
Giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light. He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins.
So the Most High has made us to be meet or worthy partakers of the inheritance of the saints of light, and he has delivered us from the power of darkness. Again, as long as we are following his ways and walking in his light, which is his Torah, his commandments, his laws, his statutes. So we're seeing what the light is, who the light is, and we're seeing that his job and his mission was to pull us out of darkness, right? So continuing on, 1 Peter 2:9, he's recalling in this, he's recalling what was spoken or told by Mashah or Moses from Deuteronomy. And Shema, will you have it? Let me see. Let me get to it too, just in case. I think it's something to. Go ahead, Op.
1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light.
So again, the nation, the Israelites, are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, which means set apart. And he's talking about how the Most High has called us out of the darkness, because we were in darkness, and he placed the lamp of light in the midst of our tabernacle, in the midst of our assembly, in the midst of our congregation. So he's given us that blessing, that mercy, that grace to even know his ways, that we may follow them. And I wanted to mention something else about Peter, but I'm not gonna. I'll save that for next time. So earlier, like we were saying, Hamashiach, originally he said that he was the light of the world, but he was to be that light so that we can have a living, walking example, and that we can follow his example when he went back to sit at the right hand of his Father. So if you could turn to Matthew chapter 5, and it's on the screen too, but Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 and 16, and he talks about it. And you can start at 13. Shema, when you have it.
All right, Matthew chapter 5, starting at verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
All praises. So first, he uses a metaphor for salt. And you know how it is to eat unseasoned food. You know, we make jokes about that all the time. Um, but the salt that we have is the righteousness that the Most High has shown us through his ways. So we have to exhibit that salt with each other, and also so that the other people, our other families who are still in darkness, and the other nations can see how we treat one another, how we treat and go out and move and act within the world, adding that flavor to everything. And then, of course, you know, we use that metaphor for I guess vanity reasons, where, you know, pretty much anything an Israelite does or so-called African American, it catches on with the world. So whether it's fashion, music, sports, movies, whatever the case may be, you know, we're the salt of the earth in that aspect as well. Now he goes into the topic of what we've been talking about for weeks, that you are the light of the world. But first he said he was the light of the world. So it's changing. So now he's kind of really giving us the whole purpose for him coming, is so that we can be, you know, the lights that's within the world. We're not supposed to hide or dim our lights, but our light is walking the path that he set for us. So we're supposed to exude the commandments and love our brother, love our neighbor, love one another. And in the keeping of that, the people who are seeing our walk and seeing how we move, our light is shining on them, and then we can bring them out of darkness. Does that make sense? Did anybody have any comments about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say with this, I like this chapter and verse because even after Yahushua talks about us being the light of the world, and then in 16, you know, saying, let our lights shine before men that they may see our good works and glorify our Father. He goes straight from saying that into the next three verses talking about the law. Is it cool if I read those three? Yeah, so he goes from saying, you know, let our light shine before men that they may see our good works, to saying, do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So I think it just further like illustrates that point of Yah's commandments being the light.
Absolutely. And also too, you see how, like what I got highlighted on the screen, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. But I thought we don't need works. And it's right there. It's nothing fancy or anything. Let your light shine. The light is your walk in the commandments, that the people may see your actions, may see your works. And they say all we need is faith. We don't need works. But the Messiah just said, let the people see your good works. And when they see your good works, it glorifies your Father, which is in heaven. That makes sense? Gamaria?
So I just love, just like Brother Anthony stated, nephew, he was basically telling us, it's almost like our parents telling us who you are and then telling you how you have to act to be who you are. So it's almost like you're great, you're the light, but then I'm giving you instructions on how to continue to be the light. And I just love how in our day and age where our parents will tell us, you're the man of the house and you got to make sure you do this and do that and do that. So it's almost like I'm telling you who you are and I'm telling you what you need to be that. So all praises.
I agree, and I like that because we all want to, and Christians, and pretty much most people of any type of religious faith, we want to dwell in the house of God. We want to dwell in the house of Yah. We want to dwell in the house of our Father. So if you're in your Father's house, your Father has rules. Exactly. So he's doing the honorable, sensible thing by telling you these are the rules you have to follow in order for you to live in my house. And the whole book really is just saying the same things in different ways, using different metaphors and a multitude of things that we can understand that's relatable. Did anybody online have a comment about that or anything we said so far? This one is just a witness, just a second witness to another witness to what we've been saying, and this is in Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 12 through 15, and 15 was the main one that's on the screen. But start at 12. Shabbat, will you have it?
All right, Philippians chapter 2, starting at verse 12. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling.
Stop right there. Again, he says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. But if we are just to believe and just to have faith, why do we have to work out something? It's because we are to do an action. Continue.
Verse 13. For it is the Most High who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. Do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of the Most High, without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world.
So again, we are to shine as lights in the world. And it says, do all things without murmurings and disputings, that we may be blameless and harmless, the sons of the Most High, without rebuke. So if we're going to be blameless in front of the Most High, that means we have to keep his commandments. We have to keep what he said to do so we can be blameless. And obviously, in the midst of a perverse nation, it's like us being in captivity. We're in the midst of a perverse nation, but we are to follow the Most High's instructions. Paul is writing to the Philippians and telling them the same thing. In the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom you, the Israelites, shall shine as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, and that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. So again, it's just reaffirming what it is to be that light, and what it means to be that light. I did want to go back real quick to Matthew, real quick, and harp on what Brother Anthony was talking about in Matthew 5. Just came to my mind. At verse 17, when it says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." So sometimes people who have been taught from the Eurocentric Christianity point of view will say that, see, he fulfilled everything already. But that's not what this statement is saying. He says he's not come to destroy the law, meaning that it's still intact, and then he came to fulfill. But you have to use the other verses in the Bible, and some we already went over. If you check the other classes, like Isaiah 60 or Isaiah 61, and he stopped in the middle of reading when he opened the scroll of Isaiah, because he was fulfilling up to a certain point. But then there's other prophecies that has yet to be fulfilled. So everything can't yet be finished, if that makes sense. So they're taught that everything is finished and it's the finished works of Christ. So now all we have to do is believe on him. But when he said fulfill, he was in the midst of doing the fulfilling, but the fulfilling wasn't full yet, because he still has to return. That's a prophecy that's not fulfilled, right? He has to, even no matter if you believe from the Eurocentric point of view or the Hebrew Israelite point of view, there's still more things for Christ or Yahweh Shai to do. Therefore, it can't be any type of finished works. Then it talks about, he doubles down and says that not until heaven or earth pass away, not even the smallest part of the law should pass from the law until everything is fulfilled. And then it says, "Whoever shall therefore break one of these least commandments and teach men to do so, and teach men to break the commandments, or preach that you don't need the commandments, shall be called least in the kingdom." Some people think that that means they'll still make it to the kingdom, but just be called less than. That's not what that is saying. That is saying that we will remember them as less than in the kingdom. So we would, let's say we're in the kingdom, and we'll talk about how, you remember when Creflo Dollar used to preach that you don't need to keep the 10 commandments? His reputation will be least, or in the dirt, pretty much, is what that's saying. It's not saying, but you still make it into the kingdom because you taught people that you don't have to keep the Most High's commandments. That don't even make any sense at all, but that's what people say. So I wanted to come back and cover that. And then it says, "But whosoever shall do and teach them," remember this part for the very, very end, "but whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." So just put a little star beside that for the very, very end. Whosoever shall do and teach the Most High's commandments shall be called great in the kingdom. Anybody have any comments before we move forward online? In person? Just want to make sure. All right, let's turn to John chapter 12. John chapter 12. All right, John chapter 12 and verse 35.
Then Yahushua said to them, a little while longer, the light is with you. Walk while you have the light, lest darkness overtake you. He who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of light. These things Yahushua spoke and departed and was hidden from them.
And then I'm going to just reread it and kind of go over it again. Verse 35, Yahushua or Jesus said unto them, yet a little while is the light with you. Who is he talking about? Himself. So he's telling them, yet a little while I am with you, the light. Walk while you have the light. Follow me while I'm here. Listen to what I'm trying to say while I'm physically here, because we didn't get to see him. So he's telling them to walk in the light while you have the light, unless darkness, which represents sin and separation from the Most High, comes upon you. And then he says, 36, while you have the light, which is himself and the commandments from the Most High, believe in the light, that you may be, in the KJV it says, that you may be the children of the light. So to be the children of the light, we have to keep his commandments and believe in his son. It's the same message that we get from Revelations all the way throughout the Bible. Does that make sense? All right. So, establishing that we are to be children of the light, establishing that we are to keep the Most High's commandments, that we are to believe in his son, then it talks about how light and darkness can't, flow together. Because if you turn on a light in a dark room, the area where that light is shining is no longer dark. So it's like there's no way the two can coexist. So 2 Corinthians 6 and 14 starts us on that path about light and darkness and their fellowship or lack of fellowship with one another. So let me turn to that. Go ahead and start reading that out.
All right. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? And what communion has light with darkness?
So what fellowship or partnership can righteousness have with wickedness? We can use this verse when we have friends and family who may begin to want to follow the Most High, or have started on that journey, or have been in that journey of following the Most High, but they continue to surround themselves with wickedness, or people who are still dealing in wickedness. Like if I've overcome, being in the streets and selling drugs, I shouldn't be in the midst of fellowshipping with people who are still selling drugs. That makes sense? Righteousness and wickedness should not flow together and cannot flow together. And that's the same correlation as light and darkness. So Paul, who they believe wrote most of these letters, we're going to start to see the same language in said letters. The next one is in Ephesians. Ephesians Ephesians chapter 5. And I have the key verses on the screen, but really we just start at the top and take it from there. Shemai, will you have it?
All right. Ephesians chapter 5, starting at verse 1. Therefore, be imitators of the Most High as dear children, and walk in love as Hamashiach also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to the Most High for a sweet smelling aroma. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not even be named among you, as is fitting for saints.
Stop right there. Fornication, all uncleanliness or covetousness, let it not be named once among you as you becometh saints. Fornication, uncleanliness, covetousness, all are sins according to the Old Testament so-called commandments. So Paul, or whoever's wrote Ephesians, is telling us here in the New Testament to keep the commandments. And continue.
Verse 4. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. For this you know, that no fornicator, unclean person, nor covetous man who is an idolater has any inheritance in the kingdom of Hamashiach and of the Most High.
Stop right there. So that's what we were saying earlier. If you want to dwell in your father's house, then you have to follow your father's rules. So he goes on to list more commandments that we shouldn't break. So whoremongers, being unclean, covetousness, again, or idolater. Neither one of those people have an inheritance in the kingdom of the Messiah and of the Most High. Verse 6.
Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of Yah comes upon the sons of disobedience.
Stop right there. So don't let any man deceive you with vain or empty words, because for these things is all the things he listed before. Fornication, uncleanliness. To make it simple, the keeping of the law, the keeping of the Most High's commandments. Don't let any man deceive you into thinking that you don't have to keep the Most High's commandments, because of those things, the wrath of the Most High will come upon the children who breaks the Most High's commandments. That's what he's saying. Verse 7.
Therefore do not be partakers with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are the light in Adonai. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth.
So you were in darkness, you were in sin. The Most High is using his Son to pull you out of the sin and reconnect to him. So now, because of that sacrifice, that grace, that mercy that everybody loves to talk about, now walk as the children of light. He's telling you right there that you have to do something. He could have said, believe as the children of light. He said, walk, meaning to act out. Continue.
Finding out what is acceptable to the Adonai, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret.
Stop right there. Yeah. So everything he listed before verse 10, and then in verse 8 he says, walk as the children of light, which is the fruit of the Spirit in all goodness and righteousness and truth. If we were keeping up with our definitions according to the Bible, we know that righteousness and truth represents the Most High's covenant. And those things prove what's acceptable unto the Most High. You see that? Verse 10 says, proving what is acceptable. So if you want to know what is acceptable to the Most High, then all you have to do is read his covenant. And the writer here listed a bunch of the things that we were not to do to prove what is acceptable unto the Most High. And then it says, don't have fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness. So don't stay around your people who are constantly living in sin. Of course, go be the light to them, try to witness to them, but over time, don't keep yourself in a compromising position. Don't be partakers in the sins with them. So you have to separate yourself, and that's what to be holy means. And he says rather to reprove them, or it's another word for correct. And what does the ESV say?
Expose them.
Expose them. So we have to get over how they say, only God can judge me. Right here is telling us to reprove, correct, expose people who are doing wicked actions. So read verse 13.
But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light.
So when you're exposing the things that they're doing wrong, you're doing so by the light, which is the Most High's commandments. Your keeping of the commandments is exposing the wrong that they're doing. So when you tell them that we're not to eat pork, crab, shrimp, lobster, that's exposing the light. Is being made manifest by the light. The light told us not to do those things. The light is the commandments. So it's making manifest the light when you reprove or correct those people who are working in darkness. And continue to 14.
For whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore he says, awake you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Hamashiach will give you light.
So awaketh you that sleepest, meaning spiritually sleep, not knowing who we are, not knowing of the Most High's ways, not knowing of the Most High's laws, statutes, commandments, and what we are to be and what we are to do. That's why the disciples, Paul and others, were writing to these assemblies to wake them up. And then he's telling them to arise from the dead as a nation, and Christ, the Hamashiach, the Savior, is going to give us that light. He's just going to repeat that same thing in 1 Thessalonians 5. He's repeating, and let me turn to it and see if it was any context to it other than that. No, just read just verse 5.
1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 5. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness.
So again, that's just bringing out an extra witness that we are the children of light, which is equated to being the children of the day, and we're not the children of night or the children of darkness. Darkness representing sins, and night and the day representing the light and the keeping of the Most High's commandments. So let's turn to Romans chapter 13. And this is getting ready to wrap it up for the day. I said it's not that long. So we're almost done. Romans chapter 13, starting at verse 8. Shema.
All right. Owe no one anything except to love one another, for he who loves another has fulfilled the law.
So stop right there. For he that loveth one another has fulfilled the law. The law teaches us how to love the Most High, and it teaches us how to love our brothers and sisters. But he goes on to explain, verse 9.
For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet, And if there is any other commandment, are all summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
So there it is. Paul, book of Romans, he's telling you, owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth one another hath fulfilled the law. And if that's too vague, he says, this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not kill, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. Those come straight from the Ten Commandments. And if there's any other commandment, because every word out of the mouth of the Most High is a commandment. But he's saying that those commandments that he just listed is a summary of thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So even though we say thou shalt love thy neighbor, a Greek mind, that would be something that is abstract. But if we keep it in context of what he wrote, he gave us the examples of things physically to do right here in the New Testament. And that's why I always say we don't read, we can't read, and we can't comprehend, because there's no way we would think that Paul is preaching against the commandments when he just told them to fulfill the commandments. Verse 10.
Love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law.
Keep going.
And do this, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now our salvation is nearer than when we first believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Therefore let us cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk properly as in the day, not in revelry and drunkenness, not in lewdness and lust, not in strife and envy, but put on the Adonai Yahushua Hamashiach, and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill its lusts.
So he's doubling down, and he's giving us further details and further context. Wake up out of your sleep. Wake up. Salvation is near. The day is at hand. Let us cast off the works of darkness. We've been in darkness for too long. We've been in darkness like how we started. If you go back to the first video, we started with us being in darkness. So he's saying now it's time to cast off the darkness and walk with the armor of light. The armor of light is the Torah. We are to walk with the Most High's instructions. That's our shield. That's our armor. But people read right over this and then tell us all we got to do is just believe. And that's not what the word is saying. To put on Christ or Yahushua is to help us keep the Most High's ways, to keep us from lust, to keep us from making provisions for our flesh. To walk in the flesh is contrary to walking in the spirit. Walking in the spirit is, like he said in Romans 7 or 8, the law is spiritual. The flesh is do what you want. So he's telling us this whole time in the New Testament that we're supposed to keep the Most High's commandments. But we let them dupe us into thinking that we didn't have to do that. And it's like, it's been right here the whole time. Anybody have any comments in person or online? You can unmute before we move on to the next part. All right. The next part is the last part. And we're going to the book of Daniel. We're going to the book of Daniel. And this is the part where I said it's connected back to Matthew's chapter 5. Just seeing that. You see Matthew's 5. When he says, but whosoever shall do and teach them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So Daniel chapter 12, let me see if I need to read more than just verse 3. Just start at verse 1.
The book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 1. Shema.
Shema.
At that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever.
So Daniel is writing that there's a time where the archangel Michael is going to stand up, the prince who is watching over the children of Israel. And he says, there shall be a time of trouble such as there never was since there was a nation. We're in the midst of that now. There's a class that we did that covered that same topic. I got to see which class it is. But I don't know if it's on the channel or not. I have to double check. But the same thing has been happening to our people over and over for a long period of time, going from Babylonian captivity to the Persian captivity to the Greek to the Roman to 70 AD to the slave trade that we're still in the midst of right now. So when that captivity comes to an end, sometime in the future, we know that there's going to be a time when the Messiah returns. People who are asleep in the earth is going to awake, and some will awaken into everlasting life. Some will awaken to everlasting shame and contempt for their final judgment. And then it says, and they that be wise, wisdom comes from the Most High's commandments. So they that shall be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, the light. Your original intention was to shine as the brightness of the firmament. Just like when we look up and see the stars, the Most High has intended us to be made and shine bright, just like we see the stars shining bright in the sky. That's why he continuously used this metaphor of being the light, because you are supposed to be the light. And then it says, and they that turn many to righteousness will shine like the brightness of the stars forever and ever. Just like Matthew 5, it says that those who teach men to keep the commandments gets to dwell in the house or be considered great in the kingdom of the Most High and his Son. You see how those two things flow together? And what I saw for myself just putting these notes together is just that from the old to the new, from Paul, who they say is speaking that we don't have to keep the commandments, they're telling us the whole time to believe on the Messiah and then to walk as he walked, to be the light, which means to walk in the Most High's commandments. Does that make sense? So if does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? Feel free to unmute your mic and we'll see if we can talk about it.
I just kind of wanted to say, I know we were always intended, I'm not sure if you said it already, but I know we've said it in the past here, but we were always intended to be the light, like with Adam, you know, we were always supposed to be the light, and he just kind of recapping that again, like, you know, throughout this book, that's all it talks about is us being the light. So yeah, just kind of wanted to say.
Just like when Moses walked up to the mountain to get the commandments, when he came back down, his face was shining so bright that the people had to put a veil on it, because he was really right there next to the righteousness, the light, the goodness, the Torah, the way, the walk, the lamp, the menorah, the fire. So his face was shining. That's the intent that the Most High had for us from the beginning. That's why we are to be children of the light. So good comment. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just the water for this class is very edifying, and I think it's just pretty awesome to see, even within the New Testament. I haven't been reading it as much, as I used to, being a Christian back then. But revisiting the scriptures that I would read a lot, it's just great to just see how, like, when we have the understanding of the Torah and just the understanding of our culture, that it makes those scriptures or those verses just not be vague like they used to be. Because I would read those things and I would have a heart to want to do whatever it is that it was saying, but like when you just hear walk in the light and you don't have any like understanding of the Hebraic, I guess, like culture that it's tied to, it just sounds like a good thing, but it's like, what do I, how is that practical? Like, what can I do practically to walk in the light? But just knowing how the light is Yah's commandments, it just makes everything that's being said there very tangible, which I appreciate.
Awesome comment, man, and all praise to the Most High for that. And the same thing that you're experiencing is the exact same thing I'm experiencing. Like, I hadn't even seen or paid attention to the Romans 13 until last night. So it's the same thing, and that's why we stress to someone new to start at the beginning. Build your house on a solid foundation. Build up and act like you don't know anything about a New Testament. All you know is the book that you're on. So when you're in Genesis, all you know is Genesis until you get to Exodus. All you know is Exodus until you get to Leviticus. And then if you're building up that house brick by brick, layer by layer, those things will be important. Those things should be important to you, like the words of the Most High. You don't even know about the Savior yet. You don't know why you even need a Savior yet. So you'll continue to read until you take those steps to see, oh, this is why you need a Savior, because they start walking contrary to the Most High's ways. And the Most High told Mashah that he was going to send someone like unto him, who he's going to put his words in his mouth. And then if we don't listen to the Messiah, then he's going to hold our sins accountable to us. So that's why you still have to believe in the Messiah. But if you're building a strong foundation from the beginning, by the time we get to the so-called New Testament, those things that we knew in the past should hold strong and firm in our mind. So now we'll be able to see when he said, walk in the light. If your reading comprehension is following like what we've been taught in school, and we establish in the book of Psalms and the book of Proverbs that the law is the light, when we see the light in the New Testament, we're supposed to automatically already be caught up to speed on what the light is. That's why when I started the class really is about the light to the Gentiles. But you can't understand what the light to the Gentiles is about if you don't know what darkness is and you don't know what the light is. So my teaching style that the Most High helps me do is kind of give a linear track to try to walk people into what the point of the message is. So that's why we started in the beginning just talking about what was light, what was darkness. Do we think that we were born in darkness or we were born in light, and why? Before we even got to the prophecies, the Messiah, or any of that. Because if we're reading it and building that house and building that foundation, by the time we get to Romans and we get to Philippians and we get to Ephesians, and they're saying things like, come out of darkness, don't walk in darkness, walk in the light. no one should be able to tell us these vague things. Because on one hand, if we was in church, we will see them not keeping the Sabbath, not keeping the feast days, not keeping the dietary laws, but then they would try to condemn people for ones that they consider wrong. So, whether it be adultery or fornication, they might tell you against some of those things, but then at the same time they leave a big gray area for all of the other commandments that the Most High has brought. So that's why it leaves us in confusion. Like you said, when I see things like walk in the light and you want to do the thing that's right by the Most High, but we don't even know what is right by the Most High. That's why that verse where he said proving what is acceptable unto the Most High. I think that might have been in Ephesians 5. Was that in Ephesians 5?
Yeah, 5:10.
Yeah, Ephesians 5 and 10. Yeah, Ephesians 5 and 10. Proving what is acceptable unto the Most High. And then when we read up, he started like reading about how we shouldn't break the Most High's ways. So to prove what is acceptable, he told us what was acceptable in the beginning. So is there any other questions or comments?
I just got a comment. Just all praises for putting this in a digestible setup, because it gives you something to ponder upon, and like you stated before, you're building on it, and it kind of slow rolls, especially for those that may be looking at a later time to kind of be able to kind of absorb what. So all praises for that, and that technique. Thank you.
All praises to the Most High. And next time, I'm not sure exactly when, but one of the next things we'll get back to like light to the Gentiles, as far as specifically focusing on the Gentiles, because now we've covered like the darkness, the light. Who is the light? What is the light? Now we know that we are to be the children of that light. So we're done with that part. But what does it mean further? Or we talked about it in the second video, but also now it's like more witnesses on specifically who those Gentiles were, because a lot of people think that it's talking about the other nations. So we covered it some, but there's just some more things to cover that you'll see in like the book of Acts, and it's right there in our face telling us what's going on. But we just, sometimes when someone tells you in the beginning and steer your mind in one direction, you'll just stay off course the whole time until someone comes back and puts you back on course. So that's what we're trying to do, get back on course and have things in context to what the text is actually saying. So that's to come up on the next iteration of this. And